Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for tuning in. Luke St. Martin, Eric H526, two amazing moderators on this live stream. Thank you so much. Two of the best moderators in all of YouTube. Eric, hello. Luke, how was the barbecue? I can tell from your message in the chat that it was amazing. So, I'm glad you enjoyed. Ladies and gentlemen, Kelly, I'll give you the link right now. So, the link to the stock market crash channel, you could just go ahead. We'll do it right here. Stock market crash channel. Here is the link. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much. I actually just have a pretty awesome one out. Mashed potato brains is sending U.S. into recession as oil prices heading towards $125 per barrel. Actually, I predict this year they'll break all-time highs, which were seen under President Obama. So it's interesting how you have President Obama, then Biden, with all of these calamities taking place. Here, ladies and gentlemen, is the link to my super chat. Thank you so very much. So, Kelly, the link is right here. Eric and Luke, thank you. Everybody here, we have a lot to talk about. And 1, 2, hello. For these live streams, when it comes to the Durham probe, I'm just going to put Durham probe special counsel is expanding, and then part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so, just part a million. So we'll just do that, and because it's just easier that way for a lot of reasons. But there's a really, really interesting development that I want to talk about, and I will have an upload on this tomorrow morning. Wall Street Journal. Durham probe reveals government access to unregulated data streams. Hit subscribe to this channel. Hit subscribe to the stock market crash channel. It's below in the pinned comment, and also I just shared the link on the chat. To my super chat, I can't thank you enough. If you want to support this live stream, if you enjoy the live streams, your super chat is greatly appreciated. It's right underneath where you write messages. Everyone here is so wonderful. I just appreciate everything. So, Durham probe reveals government access to unregulated data streams. Special counsel investigations into origins of Bureau's Russia probe points to how cybersecurity researchers and government agencies tap into huge reservoirs of potentially revealing internet data. Now, if you want to say, well, it wasn't illegal, they were contracted to just obtain information, that's not a problem. It becomes a problem. David Von Kettering, hello. It becomes a problem when you are knowingly passing information that's not only manipulated, but you're passing information that's non-public data for the sole purpose of disparaging and painting a picture that doesn't exist. So U.S. government entities and private security companies are able to monitor the flow of web traffic by tapping into vast quantities of data with little oversight or public awareness. The Democrats did this to Trump, and they were very, very effective. They didn't really have anything on Donald Trump, and so what they did was fabricate a whole lot of absurd, nonsensical, false, fake, phony stories that were then investigated by people within the government. That is not legal. That's under 18 U.S. Code 371. I wrote about that. In the Federalist. You can go H.A. Goodman Federalist. You could read my writing in the Federalist. Or you can go to hagoodman.com, read all my writing in various publications. But here, the latest development in a high-profile criminal probe by Special Counsel John Durham show the extent to which the world's internet traffic is being monitored by network researchers and security experts inside and outside the government. Mr. Durham has been looking into the origins of the Bureau's investigation into alleged ties between the Trump campaign and Russia. Now, here's where it gets insidious. The United States has an intelligence apparatus. The three uh, agencies that said that they were highly to moderately confident because they never guaranteed, they never stated with certainty the DNC was hacked or that Trump worked with Russia. They assessed that Russian Facebook ads helped Trump. Well, okay, but nobody gave any analysis of how many people switched their votes from Clinton to Trump because of a Facebook ad. The whole thing was nonsense. But what happened was government bureaucrats were given information from people like Michael Sussman and the tech executives and the tech people that he worked with to set up and frame Trump. They didn't have anything on Trump. So what they did was they purchased a dossier. They obtained all of this internet data, and they gave all that information to government agencies. And those government agencies then said, well, gosh, we have to investigate. It was a very sick, insidious, overtly duplicitous, and disingenuous public relations game. They had nothing on Trump except suspicion. But you can't go ahead and investigate an incoming candidate or an incoming president based only on suspicion. Okay? And exactly, David Von Kettering. Let's read this. Mr. Durham has been looking into the origins of the Bureau investigation into alleged ties between Trump campaign and Russia. Recent court filings in his case against cybersecurity lawyer Michael Sussman, as well as documents obtained by the Wall Street Journal through public records requests, show how U.S. government entities and private cybersecurity companies are able to monitor the flow of web traffic by tapping into vast quantities of data with little oversight or public awareness. Though such technical data doesn't directly reveal identities or message content, it can at times be reverse engineered to link online activity back to specific individuals or organizations. Now, what happened with Trump was that you had a media that was willing to believe anything. Any allegation against Clinton, any allegation against Biden, you must have direct categorical proof, or media will tear it apart and refuse to believe that it's possible that, millions of dollars from Uranium One led to a quid pro quo situation. And so you will get fact check. You'll get a million fact checks because media is in the tank for one political party. Media is in the tank for the Democratic Party. That's it. They're in the tank for the Democratic Party. It's not even up for debate. That's why trust in media is an all-time low. There used to be a time, ladies and gentlemen, when you could watch David Brinkley, Sam Donaldson, Peter Jennings, Ted Koppel. You can watch these people, and they didn't care. They did not. Even Wolf Blitzer back in the day, they did not care. They did not care who won. They really didn't care who won. And they just simply did not care. They had no stake in it. They weren't ideologues either way. And that changed probably about 5-6 years ago. It changed because you have journalists now who are in their late 20s, early 30s. They look at journalism from the vantage point of an activist. They don't want they're averse to actually reporting or investigating, and the editors as well. They don't want to investigate or report on anything detrimental to the Democratic Party because they're Democrats. And they think that truth coincides with whatever is good for the Democratic Party. Not so much. They don't look at truth as independent of left or right. And so you have to ask yourself, well, when when there's, for example, a tarmac meeting in Arizona between Attorney General Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton, could you imagine if William Barr, could you imagine if William and Christopher Sign, God bless him, God bless that man, that his soul, he broke that story. Nobody wanted to touch that story. Nobody wanted to touch that story. Okay, he broke that story. And I believe he was quite shocked that he didn't even get any accolades for breaking the story. Nobody wanted to, nobody in the media, I would say traditional or, I would say traditional media, the Washington Post, New York Times. I mean, you have Christopher Sign as an example. Here's a man who, in 2016, broke a story that should have made national headlines. A Pulitzer Prize winning story. The Attorney General of the United States of America meeting with Bill Clinton, the husband of a candidate who's being investigated for top secret intelligence on private servers. And instead of accolades, instead of, awards, instead of the Pulitzer Prize, nobody wants to touch it. Nobody wants to touch the story, and people grudgingly accept that this very courageous journalist broke that story. Well, but see, that's not the case. If Trump sneezes, they get a Pulitzer Prize. There were Pulitzer Prizes in the Washington Post for, really quickly. Do you want to know what some people got the Pulitzer Prize for, hold on, let's see, prize, Trump. So one Washington Post, great journalist, really wonderful, for persistent reporting. Listen to this. Listen to this. What does this mean? Okay, Christopher Sign breaks a story that nobody wanted to touch about Attorney General Loretta Lynch literally meeting with Bill Clinton. Could you imagine if William Barr met with, Ivanka Trump or Melania Trump or, Jared Kushner or Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump? Could you imagine? And then suddenly no charges were, or there wasn't even no indictments or any, the end of an investigation right after he meets on a plane. It would never, they would demand endless investigations and Senate panels and House panels and oh my God, and Adam Kinzinger would say this is the end of democracy, and Liz Cheney would say, oh my God, he's an authoritarian, he's an autocrat. One Washington Post report for persistent reporting that created a model for transparent journalism in political campaign coverage while casting doubt on Donald Trump's assertion of generosity towards charities. What does this mean? What does this mean? You used to get the Pulitzer Prize for a groundbreaking. You used to get the and no offense, this is great journalist at the Washington Post. Man, I never won a Pulitzer Prize, so I'm not being salty or what but it's an establishment. It is now an establishment, and it probably always was, but not so much as today. It is an establishment. It is an establishment prize. So what does that mean? For persistent reporting that created a model for transparent journalism, how has this journalist's reporting been used to find out any criminal activity or corruption on the Democratic Party side. Coverage while casting doubt. When has reporting been used to cast doubt on any politician's assertion of anything? What does that even mean? Can somebody in the chat explain what does this mean? Casting doubt on Donald Trump's assertion of generosity towards charities. So the reporting led to doubt. So he didn't give to charities, because that doesn't mean, like, having doubt that Trump asserted he gave money doesn't mean he didn't give money. So you're casting doubt. Your reporting is casting doubt. Did your report find out that he didn't give money to charities? So did your report find out anything about the Clintons in Haiti, for example, or Democrats in Haiti? And by the way, I want Hillary Clinton to be the next Democratic Party nominee. I think she will be, actually. I think she'll run again. And God bless her. She should be the nominee. So, Oakworm, you deserve Pulitzer. Thank you so very much. Oakworm, thank you so very much. Greatly, greatly, greatly appreciated. Thank you so very much. Oakworm, thank you so much. So kind of you. And I appreciate the kind words. Thank you. But really, I mean, it's so interesting. David Von Kettering, very kind of you. Oakworm, thank you so much. Eric and Luke, thank you. So kind of you. I mean, again, it's not like little proof of Trump's big giving. I was like, okay. How does this better the world? So you've disparaged a political candidate on the right, or you disparaged the Republican nominee. Fantastic. Any investigative journalism at the Washington Post pertaining to the Clinton Foundation, or pertaining to Biden and his son and a laptop that showed obvious pay-to-play schemes? Like, nothing. So look, Farenthold is a fantastic journalist. I have nothing bad to say. He's a great journalist. But I don't even know what this means. Persistent reporting. Okay, well, the Washington Post has a vendetta against Trump. Persistent reporting that created a model. Well, how has that model ever been used against Democrats? For transparent journalism, I don't know how transparent the journalism is. This reporter also went after Bernie Sanders. Anyone who was in any way an obstacle to Clinton, the Washington Post went after. And so again, it's like, I'm not being salty. He's a great journalist. Okay, obviously, one of the great journalists in D.C. But I don't understand how he wins a Pulitzer Prize. What does this even mean? Persistent reporting that creates a model for transparent journalism. Okay, well, if it's so transparent, please tell me the last time it was used against a Democratic candidate. In political campaign coverage while casting doubt on Donald Trump's assertion. Why would anyone need to cast doubt on Trump's assertion without casting doubt on Clinton or Biden's assertions of not knowing what his son was doing, for example, Hunter, of generosity towards charity? So again, like, it's not. I'm not trying to be, it's. I don't understand what that means. Oakworm, thank you so very much. Thank you, Oakworm. Thank you. It's like S23. Hello. So, let's continue. I mean, you have a situation where it's interesting. President Trump, he did so many great things. He was able to overcome so many challenges, and it's almost like his Achilles heel. What makes him great is also what is detrimental to him. He is a fighter, and he never backs down. And if he just, there's one critique that William Barr and others accidentally have a point And it's not even but it's within the context they're leveling. It's not really the context that I'm leveling or that I'm like utilizing. President Trump could work on building bridges, creating political momentum, and throwing a curveball or a sinker or a slider at media, not just fastball, fastball, fastball. Because if you keep throwing, it doesn't matter if you throw 98 or 102 or 96 miles per hour. If you keep throwing fastballs, you can just time it. The Major League Baseball players, it doesn't matter if they bat 250 or 240. If they can time a fastball, they'll get a hit or hit it out of the park. If you can, the great pitchers, Pedro Martinez, Greg Maddux, they change speeds. Greg Maddux was able to change speeds, and Nolan Ryan, he would throw 102 and then have an off-speed pitch that would probably be, 70, 78, 82, and he would be, almost everybody would be out in front and strike out. So it's something that, oh, sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. They didn't kick anybody off the stream last time. It's interesting. Buffalo Man, hello. Robbie, hello. 1, 2, hello. Everybody here, hello. Yeah, sorry about that. Sometimes they kick people off. But here, let's get back to this. Mr. Durham is booking it. Recent court filings in his case against cybersecurity lawyer Michael Sussman, as well as a document obtained by the Wall Street Journal through public record request, show how U.S. government entities and private cybersecurity companies are able to monitor the flow of web traffic by tapping into vast quantities of data with little oversight or public awareness. Though such technical data doesn't directly reveal identities or message content, it can at times be reverse engineered to link online activity back to the specific individuals or organizations. A filing by prosecutors early this month said people affiliated with Donald Trump's 2016 Democratic rival for presidency, Hillary Clinton, worked to exploit non-public internet traffic data that they had access to in order to establish a narrative tying Mr. Trump to Russia. Mr. Sussman's lawyer called the allegations misleading and irrelevant. They are, of course, not misleading, and they're very relevant. Because the whole point is, if you can always look, whenever, ladies and gentlemen, you look at the Durham probe, always ask yourself how they would react if the reverse were true. Oakworm, thank you very, very much. Greatly appreciated. Greatly appreciated. Imagine if the reverse were true. Imagine if the reverse were true. Imagine if Trump paid Rudy Giuliani to work with tech executives to find internet data on Robbie Mook and, people in Clinton's campaign and, Uma Abedin and Hillary Clinton herself and, Cheryl Mills and everybody. Imagine. Not one government agency would look at it. The media, they would win Pulitzer Prizes for, fact checking everything. Suspicion is an emotion that is allowed when it's leveled only one way, left to right. You cannot be suspicious of any Democrat. It's not possible to be suspicious. You can't be suspicious. That's the issue. And so what they did, they utilized suspicion to set up and frame Trump. And this was a Wall Street Journal article. And so let's continue. So The monitoring is made possible by little scrutinized partnerships, both informal and formal, among cybersecurity companies, telecommunication providers, and government agencies. The U.S. government is obtaining bulk data about network usage according to federal contract documents and people familiar with the matter, and has fought disclosures about such activities. Academic and independent researchers are sometimes tapped to look at data and share any findings with the government without warrants or judicial authorization. Unlike the disclosures by former intelligence contractor Edward Snowden from nearly a decade ago, which revealed U.S. intelligence programs that relied on covert access to private data streams, the sharing of internet records highlighted by Mr. Durham's probe concerns commercial information that is often being shared with or sold to the government in bulk. Such data can possess enormous intelligence value, according to current and former, especially as the power of computers to derive insights from massive data sets has grown in recent years. See, the thing is, all of this information didn't tell anyone that Russia would be invaded, or that Russia would be invading Ukraine. I mean, you kind of you kind of knew you kind of knew that would happen because they had you kind of knew it would happen because they had um, hundreds of thousands of soldiers, okay, um, on the border of Ukraine before they eventually did invade. But where was the intelligence information during the withdrawal when Biden botched the Doha Agreement? When Biden was, for example, when mashed potato brains was um, waiving sanctions on Nord Stream 2, where was the intelligence saying, hey, you know what, that's probably going to embolden Putin? Or maybe they got that intelligence and they were like, okay, no problem. You're talking about let's see, how many people employed by NATO? Okay, NATO. How many? uh so 3,800, but 6,000 people. So how many civilians work for NATO? 6,000 people. Let's see. NATO response 40,000 troops from member nations. So, what's the average salary of? Okay, so 112,000. So it's like decent, pretty good salary. You probably live a very good life in European countries with that salary, but you're probably making a lot more the higher up you are in NATO. The point is, you have this alliance, this military alliance that, had it not existed, we wouldn't have this issue in Ukraine. We wouldn't have Libya completely destroyed or destabilized for the past decade. I shouldn't say completely destroyed. I say they destabilized Libya, so, and caused mayhem and chaos since the intervention. The point is, you have these you have these government agencies and government and multinational institutions and regional alliances that Trump was right about. It's like people derive a great deal of influence, political income, monetary gain, political influence, and it's not like an organization is going to have your best interest in mind. Bureaucracies exist to further their own existence, not to help you out in any way. Generally, the point is we join these multinational organizations or regional alliances or these treaties because the goal is to further your own national interests and find common interests with other countries so you can better help further your own national interest. The problem is that there are always countries that either control what NATO does, for example. There's always countries that have more influence within an organization than other countries. Also, it's not like how does it benefit the United States when the United States is the primary protector of most of the countries in NATO? The US, France, and the UK are the only NATO members with nuclear weapons. So how does it help, aside from utilizing NATO as to legitimize U.S. foreign policy, so we can say, well, it's a NATO intervention, it's not just us. But you could do that. Bush had the coalition of the willing. You could always find a coalition. So I don't understand, we still have the issue of nuclear weapons. What's the point? What is the point of having a Cold War alliance in 2022 and beyond? It makes no sense. So, thank you, Luke St. Martin. Thank you. Oakworm, thank you. So let's continue. The thing is, it's like you have all of this information. You have this immense stream of information that is being collected by corporations at the behest of governments and for multinational organizations, and it's like, how does all of this information benefit the world or benefit the United States or benefit these agencies? It seems that the information is just used, like in the Durham probe. It seems like the information was just used simply to set up Trump, and that's it. Just a whole bunch of fake, phony, nonsensical allegations, baseless claims. Mr. Sussman, whose firm represented the Clinton campaign as well as a tech firm that provided some data for the research, eventually passed the researchers' findings on to the Central Intelligence Agency and the Federal Bureau of Investigation for further investigation. That should never have been an option. So that should never, ever, ever have been an option. That should never have been an option. They would never have done that with Biden or Clinton. That's the point. It's interesting that they never ask themselves, well, if the shoe were on the other foot, if you flip the script, how would they react to Trump doing the same things that was done to him? They would never allow it. They would get a Pulitzer Prize, doing things that journalism that people like Tom Fitton or John Solomon, people that looked into what was going on, they'd get the Pulitzer Prizes. If the reverse took place, the Washington Post would win Pulitzers, pointing out that Giuliani and tech executives were finding dirt through massive troves of data, that all of these tech companies at the behest of governments were or being paid by governments were obtaining, and they used that information to deceive government agencies to investigate the Clintons or the Bidens. They would never allow that to take place. Media would never allow that to take place. Mr. Sussman, whose firm represented the Clinton campaign as well as a tech firm that provided some data for the research eventually passed the researcher's findings on to the Central Intelligence Agency and the Federal Bureau of Investigation for further investigation. He is charged with lying to the FBI about whom he was representing and pleaded not guilty. I think that I think that Durham is doing a very, very intelligent thing here. He's ensuring that he's making sure that he's making sure that the FBI distance itself from people like Sussman, and then people like Sussman and the people who were indicted in the Clinton campaign or other attorneys have to prove to the court that, hey, everybody in government knew what they were doing. In fact, many of these people in government were in on it. And then you get the flip and sing. Remember when they said flip and sing? It's all projection. The people who will really flip and sing will be in the Durham probe, because there's so much to flip and sing about. That's why nobody flipped and sang about Trump. They keep saying Michael Cohen this, Michael Cohen that. It's like, dude, he didn't lead to any indictments for anyone associated with Trump. Indictments that linked to any of the grandiose allegations against Trump. The only reason he flipped is because he was engaged in criminal activity. He sold his soul to media. While some independent internet experts have said the traffic appeared odd, others have offered benign technical explanations. The question is worth asking: who has access to large pools of telecommunication metadata, such as DNX records, and under what circumstances can those be shared with the government, Mr. Sanchez said. Surveillance takes the path of least resistance, Mr. Sanchez said. Today, he said, you have enough data and computing power that you can generate intrusive insights from data that is fairly unregulated. So that's what they did. They did spy on Trump. It's not difficult. So here, the Georgia Tech team partnered with Newstar. So listen to this. Internet traffic from Mr. Trump's Manhattan address was part of the bulk data being used by academic researchers funded in part by the U.S. Defense Department grants from Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, DARPA, and the Air Force Research Laboratory, according to documents. Okay, so a Georgia Tech professor and the lead researcher on the project put together a team of experts and academics to work on hunting for cyber threats in 2016. The Pentagon-funded work wasn't related to Mr. Trump. However, according to emails released by the Journal, under Georgia's public records law, the same team of researchers had begun work before the official start date of the DARPA project on the project with potential political implications. So you have this Georgia Tech team utilizing government taxpayer money to go up against Trump, to find information against Trump. I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing. The grant proposal and contract documents viewed by show that, okay, so the Georgia Tech team partnered with a Newstar, a Washington area technology and telecommunications company, to get internet logs for the DARPA project. The DARPA funding wasn't scheduled to begin until November 2016, but Newstar began transferring data to Georgia Tech researchers in late July. DARPA, through a spokesman, denied any links to the research that was turned over to federal authorities regarding Mr. Trump's computer servers, saying any data acquired before the official start of government funding was done on Georgia Tech's own accord. But they still continued after the funding took place, or after they started with the DARPA work. So at the center of the transfers from Newstar was Ronnie Jaffe. His lawyer declined to comment beyond saying he had decades of service to the U.S. government and the data he provided was legally acquired. Well, okay, it was legally acquired, no doubt. It was definitely legally acquired. What they did with it, what Sussman or the Clinton campaign did with it, might not be legal. Packet forensics. Um, while online, users, as they move around the web, generate several kinds of internet metadata of sort used to identify communications to and from Mr. Trump's Manhattan address. To access most sites and services, users must connect between their computer and a server. Logs called netflow data provide information about where and when computers connect on the internet. Another kind of data called DNS acts as a phone book for the internet, converting URLs like WallStreetJournal.com into numerical IP addresses readable by computer servers. Together, the two kinds of network data are used for widespread digital monitoring, highlight the government's ability to look very precisely at computer connections that can sometimes be traced to individuals and or companies. The indictment assessment will have chilling effect on decades of constructive cooperation between private security researchers and government. Because of the way the government, listen to this, okay. Because of the way the government in Durham has handled this, the cybersecurity community is now afraid to take anything to law enforcement. Yeah, well, you know what? Because of the way, don't do it on behalf of. You don't have it. You probably have nothing to fear if you're not paid by the Clintons. Okay, it's like because of the way representing a lawyer, it's like no, this is an issue. You can definitely, if you find something damaging to national security, yeah, but nothing Trump did was damaging to national security. If anything, the people obtaining the information on Trump were tasked with trying to find anything disparaging just to hurt him politically, and nothing to do with national security. The whole nation is at a higher risk level. No, not really. The nation is much safer if Durham does his job and ensures that cybersecurity experts don't team up with Democrats to frame and set up incoming Republican candidates. This isn't rocket science, my God. Mikhail Isaacson! It will all boil down to Sweden and Wallenberg in the end. They own Ericsson that listens in on everything in 184 countries. Mikhail Isaacson, thank you so very much. Wow, thank you. Ericsson. Been around a long time. Mikhail Isaacson, thank you. Mikhail Isaacson, thank you so very, very much. And thank you so very much for watching. Greatly, greatly appreciated. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, all of this, and I agree with you, Mikhail, all of this, it's interesting that there's all of this data. Thank you for watching in Sweden. Mikhail Isaacson, thank you. There's all of this data, this endless trove of data and information. It's like, what is it used for? My God, what is it? How at a certain point, if it's like trying to find, it's trying to find a needle in a haystack sometimes in terms of information. If you have so much data, how does it benefit you to acquire all of this data and all of this information if our wonderful intelligence community is completely blindsided always? We don't know what China is doing with Taiwan. We didn't really have a handle on what Russia was doing with Ukraine, or maybe we did in both cases, and the data was so good, but the motive was so nefarious that we just let adversaries do what they want. Who knows? It's probably that we're incompetent and we don't know how to utilize the data we acquire. Mikhail Isaacson, thank you so very much. Here, Special Counsel Durham's probe. Special Counsel Durham's probe reveals vast government and private sector access to unregulated data. Special Counsel Investigation Origins of Bureau's Russia probe points to how cybersecurity researchers and government agencies tap into huge reservoirs of potentially revealing internet data. So the thing is, it's like you never get the data going from Republicans to media about Democrats. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. JG! Exactly. Exactly. It's interesting too because I think that people born I think that people born um I would say before 19 uh let's say before 1982 or 1983. If you're in your late 30s or mid 40s, you have um you have a different perspective. You have a much different perspective than let's see, Bitcoin price. You have a much different perspective on life. Is it's I think it's important to know. I think it's a beautiful thing to have known what life was like before the internet. It's a beautiful thing to have known what life was like before taking. So there you go. It's like the market. We're going to have a devastating 2 to 3,000 point collapse within a day or two, probably more than that, within this year. Unfortunately, the market is completely like it is so counterintuitive. There's no way to pick a top, or the bottom of the market, but you know that. Let's see, oil prices. So it went down below 100. So hopefully there's some kind of peace deal or ceasefire. Interesting. Hopefully there's some kind of peace deal yeah, see the Swift ban, Steven Van Meter, he's fantastic. Steve Van Meter is awesome. He's really awesome. Definitely watch his channel. He has a great segment on how the Swift ban could actually backfire and hurt the global economy because you'd have a whole bunch of companies and corporations and um, people go bankrupt because the information of when and where and how to pay loans that might not be there if you ban Russia if you ban Russia from SWIFT. Russia's decision to invade Ukraine was originally met with relative tepid response, but now sanctions are intensifying. Key Russian banks are banned from SWIFT. The increasingly aggressive stance taken by Western leaders against Russia's invasion of Ukraine suggests Russia's energy exports could be sanctioned. Well, that hurts the people. If the energy exports are sanctioned, then how on earth do they heat their homes? And how on earth do they run their economies? So it isn't only oil and gas that will be affected by a SWIFT ban, but with supply disruptions likely to occur for aluminum, copper, nickel, cobalt, and others. So you're not going to be able, in a way, the this passion to sanction Russia is going to actually hurt not just Russia but also the global economy. And at the end of the day, they'll end up needing more Russian oil and gas. After months of frantic diplomacy, the West's worst fear finally came true. It's like, well, if that was the West's worst fear, they could have stopped that by simply negotiating a deal where Ukraine wouldn't join NATO. Richard, that's right. See, there needs to be some kind of agreement very soon. After months of frantic diplomacy, the West fears finally came true on Thursday after Russian forces launched a long-feared attack on Ukraine. Russian forces have repeatedly fired missiles at missile control centers in Kiev and other regions, though they have failed to decisively take any key city amid stiff resistance from Ukrainian forces. On the same day, Western leaders slapped a raft of fresh sanctions on Russia, including the exclusion of Russia's largest financial banks, largest financial institutions from global financial systems, imposing an asset freeze against all major Russian banks, canceling all export permits with Russia, and prohibiting major Russian companies from raising finances within their territories, among other measures. And now, what happens when Russia retaliates economically also? They provide 30 to 40% of Europe's oil and gas. So then now what happens? We were overvalued in terms of the US markets and the Nikkei in Japan and European markets as well. Little Lizzie, hello. JG, hello. David Von Kettering, hello. J-Spot 51, hello. Marky, hello. I mean, it's just everything's going to get, the whole thing is going to get worse because there's so many sacred cows. Instead of sanctioning Russia, just go ahead and there should be a NATO, US, EU brokered treaty ceasefire that says, okay, Ukraine won't join NATO. But instead, they want to level all these sanctions at Russia and then watch Russia retaliate. And then when the market completely collapses, because I always said I didn't know what the catalyst will be. I know the market's going to collapse. You can't have a functioning stock market after you've pumped $10 trillion into the market to inflate it beyond belief. With inflation through the roof, oil prices through the roof, supply chain breakdowns, and key labor shortages, and all these other problems. And I said it could be geopolitical, the catalyst. Watch hedge funds, like I said, derivative trades. That's going to tank the market too. I mean, there's like 10, 12 different scenarios that tank the entire U.S. stock market, and I wrote about this in the Federalist. Understandably, the Ukraine feels that the West has not been doing nearly enough to deter Russia. So Ukraine's foreign minister has been calling on the West to block Russia from the SWIFT payment system, a move opposed by Germany due to its heavy reliance on Russian gas supply. SWIFT, the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. By the way, Steve Van Meter has a fantastic segment. He deserves like 1 million subs. Steve Van Meter is awesome. He is awesome. Now Ukraine might finally get its wish. Western allies, including Germany, have finally agreed to unleash the ultimate financial on Russia, excluding key Russian banks from the SWIFT payment system. But that also hurts them. Steve Van Meter explains that also hurts them. That also hurts them in many ways. Okay, so, and now some analysts are saying that a SWIFT ban on Russian banks is likely to lift prices well above $100 a barrel. Well, I mean, what have you gained from this? The more you sanction Russia, the higher oil prices go, the more the more money they make from oil prices and gas prices. So maybe focusing on combating climate change with everything you had was a bad idea. Maybe, just maybe, you should just focus on the issue at hand, which is NATO membership, which NATO and the U.S., it's like the most duplicitous game possible. Like the most duplicitous game. They wouldn't allow Ukraine into NATO. But they say, oh, well, it's their choice. But Ukraine wasn't corrupt enough, too corrupt for Hunter. So Hunter Biden had no problem with making a whole lot of money in Ukraine. But NATO has a problem with allowing them in. And they say, well, it's a sovereign country. Well, then why did Biden force out a prosecutor? I thought it's a sovereign country. I didn't see Ukrainians force out Mueller or any of his prosecutors. one of whom was definitely viewed as corrupt by half of our political system. There are 10. Listen to this. So if you kick them off of Swift, you make it more difficult for loans to be paid and business transactions to be conducted. And of course, you have billions upon billions of dollars in transactions between Russia and the European Union just from oil and gas alone. You make it more difficult for all these financial transactions to take place. And so the Swift is a communication system. At least 10 oil and commodities traders have told Reuters that flows of Russian commodities to the West will be severely disrupted or halted for days, if not weeks. I mean, you're playing with. Look, the reason the whole thing hasn't collapsed is because they're still pumping money through QE into the stock market and into the economy. They haven't even they haven't even increased interest rates, which, by the way, if you ask Peter Schiff, and he laughs at this. He laughs at this. Let's listen. Let's look at Peter Schiff real quick. He's fantastic, Peter Schiff. He's hilarious. So here. So U.S. merchandise trade deficit surged to an all-time record of 107.6 billion. The U.S. economy is a complete disaster. The Russia situation is buying the dollar some extra time, but with trade deficits, this reprieve cannot last much longer. All right, so it's interesting. He hasn't really tweeted too much. I wonder why. Okay, so um, Europe has been buying more gas from Gazprom than before Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Wow. Wow. Previously, European leaders were rumored to be mulling sanctions on Russian energy. However, the European Commission president has cleared the air, announcing that Europe would instead make it impossible for Russia to upgrade its oil refineries. Ironically, Europe has been buying more gas from Gazprom than before Russian invasion of Ukraine. What? We have the worst intelligentsia of all time. The absolute worst intelligentsia of all time. And I mean, they keep saying, like, there are a lot of very smart people saying, "Whoa, this was a catastrophe for Russia." No, it wasn't. The longer this goes, the closer, like, the more likely. The longer this goes, the greater the likelihood that there will be a deal and ceasefire and negotiate a deal on, Ukraine not ever joining NATO, which is the reason for the invasion. However, Russia has so far not shown any intention of stopping oil and gas exports to Europe and the rest of the world as part of their. Okay, Putin has warned about preferring to ratchet up rhetoric about nuclear warfare. President Vladimir Putin has ordered Russian nuclear deterrent forces on high alert and a dramatic escalation of tensions. Wow. So, like, could you imagine, what happens if he decides to limit oil and gas? Could you could you imagine? Could you imagine what happens to oil prices and global economies and stock markets? Like I said, the thing is about, unfortunately, to tank, like in a biblical manner. This thing's going to tank. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much. Thank you so very much. It was a great live stream. I will be back tomorrow. Definitely watch the upload on all of this. This is a great letter, by the way, from the Republican Party of Washington County president. Why is the media? Where's the media while all of this unfolds? AWOL. You're not hearing about this, but because it all leads back to Hillary Clinton. So there you go. Ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel. Thank you so very much. Eric and Luke, thank you. Definitely subscribe to the Stock Market Crash channel. I have 2 great segments on the Stock Market Crash channel. And thanks, everybody. JG, Eric, J-Spot, everyone here. To my super chat, thank you so very much. I'll see you tomorrow, everyone. Oakworm! Thank you, Oakworm. Oakworm, I can't thank you enough. Thank you so very much. Mikael and Oakworm, thank you so very much. Oakworm, so kind of you. Greatly appreciated. Thank you very much, Oakworm. And have a great evening. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Have a great evening, Oakworm. Everybody here. Thanks, everybody. Eric and Luke, thank you. Little Lizzie, David, JG, everybody.